to be able to do an exclusive interview with Kevin Wade, the U.S. Senate candidate for Delaware, who won the Republican primary. His opponent is Chris Coons, the current Democrat senator. Hello, Kevin. Thank you for giving us this interview.
Dana, it's great to be with you. I'm very pleased to be with you. I'm also pleased to be sitting in probably the most historic building in the first state of Delaware. This is Delaware's Colonial Courthouse. On the floor above me, in June of 1776, the Patriots in the first state of Delaware declared their independence, not only from King George, but also from Pennsylvania Colony. And here we are in the year 2014, and we're talking about basic freedoms, and we're talking about opportunity and the dignity of American citizens all over again. But it's good to be with you, Dana.
Very good. I noticed in your debate with Coons that Coons brought up wealth inequality as a major issue. This is also a favorite topic for Obama. By coincidence, Friday, AUN-TV did an article about how wealth inequality has gone up and down throughout history, but there's always been a correlation where when the upper 1%'s wealth went up, the lower 90% also went up. That correlation broke down only 6 years in U.S. history, and those years are 2009 to 2014. In fact, the lower 90% wealth is back to where it was in the first term of Ronald Reagan, giving up 24 years of gains, yet the upper 1% wealth is at all-time highs, triple what it was under Reagan. Do you think it's a coincidence that the most extreme wealth inequality has come about only in the 6 years that Obama and Coons have been in office, and why do you think wealth inequality has become so extreme in 2014?
Well, wealth inequality is the description of the symptom. The illness is opportunity inequality, and generally a lack of opportunity across the full spectrum of people in American society. We've found that it's far too easy to make money on Wall Street and far too hard to make it on Main Street. So we're having right now the symptoms emerge of the disease called government intrusion into the private sector. We have not only an intrusion into the natural and healthy life of commerce in this country, but we have a heavy hand on the scale that, well, right here in Delaware, we've had Fisker Automotives that took out $22 million of state taxpayer money and a couple $100 million of taxpayers' money from across the United States, all leading to a failure. The money's gone, the jobs were not created, winners were picked, and losers were selected, and in the end, we all lost. And that's just one more indication of the lack of confidence that President Barack Obama and Senator Chris Coons have in free enterprise.
From that answer, Kevin, I think I may know what you'll answer the next one, but there's a lot of people think that wealth inequality should be actually legislated, and they suggest things such as confiscating all wealth over a certain amount, such as $10 million or $100 million. How do you feel about that?
Well, it would be an interesting theory to test, but we've already seen the results of that experiment. It was called the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, everyone had a job, but no one had a paycheck that could buy them anything in the stores. Everyone had a job, but no one really worked to produce goods and services that any of their neighbors needed. And that system collapsed on itself in a utopian search for, work for everyone and shelter for everyone, but it really didn't do a good job for anyone. So there's no reason for us in this country to repeat those terrible mistakes in the past. We have a system that works. This town that I'm sitting in now was a little coastal port back in the 1600s and 1700s. The people just struggled to get by, but in this economy that we call free enterprise, from the small settlement along the Delaware River at the top of the bay grew a tremendous industrial area, tremendous area of science and research we now know as Delaware, Northern Delaware. So that all happened without a large federal government. In fact, in the days of the most rapid increase in wealth and prosperity in the country, we had a federal government that was about the size of, well, a postage stamp.
Good. There's a lot of myths about political parties and wealth. Delaware is not a poor state, yet it tends to vote Democrat. The richest neighborhoods in America tend to vote Democrat, such as Beverly Hills, Malibu, Manhattan, and San Francisco. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think when people are on the ladder of opportunity, they seem to see the world with conservative eyes, where their money has taken hard work to earn, and they'd like to keep more of it. So people who are on the ladder of opportunity tend to vote Republican. It lines up with the core principles of the Republican Party. People have already reached the top, whether they're in Malibu or they're in, well, some of the worst neighborhoods in Detroit, are no longer on the ladder of opportunity, and they don't understand the magic that it brings.
Okay. I noticed that Chris Coons was a Republican before going to college and became a Democrat in college. The same is true of Hillary Clinton. Why do you think this pattern happens so often?
I don't think he understood. I don't think she understood why they were a Republican to begin with. It was just a label that was passed on through the family. And I believe they both were deeply influenced by the professors they had in the academic world. And perhaps they still don't have much of a, well, I don't want to go too far. They may not have the same core convictions that I've had because, for example, in my case, free enterprise has made a path of opportunity that I've been able to follow my entire life. I no longer work in a steel mill. I no longer sleep in a bedroom that has ice on the inside of the windows in the wintertime. All the comforts that my wife and I have been able to provide for in our lives have come from working hard and clipping the coupons and really following that path of free enterprise and opportunity.
Chris Coons grew up very wealthy and went to very expensive private colleges, Amherst and Yale. How does your childhood and education compare?
Well, at the same time he was a college debate champion at Amherst, I was dodging the hot steel in the number 4 rolling mill in a steel mill alongside the Schuylkill River. He studied, I guess he went to Yale Divinity School and learned right and wrong perhaps there. I kind of learned it working the first shift. You don't touch another man's lunch bucket. You keep your word. You're there to watch him. He's there to watch you. And together you make product, you make steel, you make a paycheck for your families. There are different events that shape a man's life. I'm very content with my life experiences, and I think that my audiences and the people across the state of Delaware can connect and understand with the man that I am, because my life story is very much like their own life story, Dana.
Interesting. On the issue of dealing with Ebola, there appears to be a very big difference between you and Coons. I know this came up in your debate. Coons has tweeted, "Stop freaking out about America's single Ebola death and start worrying about West Africa." He's also supported Obama's policy of allowing flights to America from Ebola epidemic areas such as Liberia.
Sure. And
from reading press accounts, it appears that Coons is a point man for Obama's policies, Ebola policies in the Senate. Kevin, if Obama had done what Great Britain and Nigeria and other countries have done, ban airline flights from Liberia, do you think Coons would be still in favor of those flights today? In other words, on this issue, do you think Coons all by himself decides this, or that he just follows Obama's policies?
Well, I know that his voting record lines up with Harry Reid about 97 or 98% of the time. I tell audiences here, and it's a bit of an exaggeration, but not too much, that Chris Coons votes with Harry Reid more often than Harry Reid votes with Harry Reid. But I'm very proud to be the first candidate for U.S. Senate on the national scene, and this goes back several weeks now, to call for prudent and cautious measures to temporarily suspend, well, the inbound flow of travelers from the affected areas until the crisis passes. That's simple common sense. It's something that people in Delaware, and I know across the country, understand. I do not understand why Chris Coons seems to be so vocal and so active in maintaining the flow of passengers into this country who have originated in the Ebola-stricken areas, because each passenger arriving is one more risk that we take, and any U.S. Senator, Republican or Democrat, has to put the health and well-being of American families first.
In general, on issues, and this actually, you partially answered this question before I got to it, but you mentioned Harry Reid, and the next question was actually about Obama. Can you think of any issues that Coons actually opposes Obama on?
Not a single one.
Do you know what those 3% that he disagreed with Harry Reid were about?
I suspect he wasn't present that day for the vote.
Oh, I see. Okay. Do you think if Obama changed his position on Ebola flights and banned them, do you think that Coons would still be in favor of him, or do you think he would just follow Obama on that?
I suspect he would follow the lead of Harry Reid.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Kevin, I've noticed a lot of dissatisfaction among Republican volunteers in elections in the past, where they get the candidate in that they wanted, then they did not get what they expected or were promised. This is at all levels,
Sure.
state, Congress, Senate, and presidential races. A national example would be that Bush said he was opposed to big deficits, then went along with them as president, even huge deficits. Why should voters in Delaware trust you not to go squishy, using the word that Margaret Thatcher had for it, on issues?
For the simple reason that I'm not going there to stay there. I'm not going there to build a career. I'm going there. The reason I stand in this race, Dana, is because I love my country. And by birthright, I had more opportunities than, most of the men who've ever lived on this earth have ever seen. And my wife and I have made a good life by taking full advantage of those opportunities, not only for our own benefit, but we've also helped many others along the way. I and many of your listeners know that we are in, jeopardy of no longer having that America to pass on to our children and our grandchildren. So I don't go to Washington because I need a job. I have a job. And I don't go there to have a business card because I have all the business cards I would ever want. I go there because I worry about my grandchildren and what they will inherit. So the reason I stand is to go down there and fix the biggest problems that our country faces, and those problems, Dana, are all centered in Washington, D.C. I'm going to go down there and do my darndest with the help and support of the people of Delaware to turn things right, to bring things along, and then, frankly, I'm coming home and going back to my family and my business.
You know, of the current senators in office, which of them would you say your voting record would be most like, if elected?
I won't be like any of the senators in office. I have promised the people in Delaware that I will be their independent voice in the U.S. Senate. I'm not going there to line up with anyone. I'm going there simply to be the voice of the people in Delaware. There are some issues that I will vote against my own best judgment, because it is the best judgment of the people in Delaware that I vote a certain way. You see, Dana, if a U.S. Senator isn't willing to represent the people at home, who would? And that's my job.
There's an article I saw that said that the Coons family had outsourced over 2,000 high-paying jobs to China, Germany, and other countries. Is that true? And what does Coons say about that?
Well, it's indisputable. Perhaps the number is in question, whether it's 2,000 or 600. In any event, in a small state such as Delaware, that's a lot of jobs. And for my opponent, who has spent so much money with television ads talking about bringing manufacturing jobs back to Delaware, he could have kept them here simply by speaking over the family, over the Thanksgiving dinner by saying, pass the turkey and save the jobs. But apparently his interest in saving jobs in Delaware has only emerged since he has a fairly credible opponent right here in 2014. My background is manufacturing, and I've laid out for the people of Delaware a very clear, specific action plan to immediately begin bringing jobs back to Delaware, and specifically blue-collar jobs, pipe fitters, electricians, carpenters, and that is to build a major natural gas export facility right here in Delaware. We're just 150 miles north of one of the largest natural gas formations in North America. We have across the Atlantic Ocean 300 million customers who presently have to buy natural gas from Russia at high prices. And Russia threatens them with the wealth and power they gain by selling the natural gas. They would love to buy natural gas, and let's build an export facility right here to put our own people to work and give our friends in Europe, a helping hand. It's a win-win situation. Of course, my opponent opposes it, but I think it's common sense, and the people of Delaware understand it.
Can you think of a question about the Delaware Senate race that you've not been asked, that the voters, deserve to have asked?
No, I think you asked the best question earlier about who will you line up with? Who are you like in the U.S. Senate? And I had a chance to really make the statement to you that many people in Delaware have heard. I need to be the voice of the people in Delaware. Even when my voice and my vote may not be exactly what I would choose from a personal standpoint. We have a problem, Dana, in the country today, and this is very important. Please pay attention. We have a problem today in that our leaders in Washington no longer believe in us. And this is the reason for the chasm and the lack of trust. And while I can't bring back trust in 50 states, I can do it right here in Delaware, and that's my promise.
Okay. Almost all politicians say that they want to seal the southern border. And this has been going on for decades, but few even try to make that happen once in office. Why do you think there's such a bait and switch on this issue by most politicians?
I think they're interested in re-election, and they're very eager to get campaign donations from groups who would rather not see that border be secure. But again, because I go in with the basis that I'm coming back as soon as the work is done, I'm not eager to please, well, I won't name any groups, but I'm not eager to please those groups who would like to keep that border porous in return for large campaign donations for the next re-elect effort.
Some things go unreported in America. One is the apparent conflict of interest for solving the problem of failed neighborhoods. The precincts where Democrats do the very best, getting 90% plus and sometimes 100% of the vote, are the most failed, dangerous, and jobless neighborhoods in America. The number one cause of death in these neighborhoods for young people is being murdered. There's despair and illiteracy. The schools fail to teach decade after decade. The worse things get, the more Democrat they vote, and the more Democrat they vote, the worse things get.
It's a cycle of dependency.
Okay. The opposite is Provo, Utah, rated the most Republican voting city in America. It's not as rich as Malibu or Manhattan, but it has a zero murder rate, and children are very safe there, and the schools turn out literate students. Back to the failed neighborhoods and the Democrat 90% neighborhoods. You know, it's basically hell for the people who live there. It's bad for America. It's bad for the Republican Party, but there's one winner, and that's the Democratic Party. These destroyed neighborhoods are heaven for the Democratic Party in elections. They do not even need to spend money on elections there. They just spend money on getting the vote out. Do you think the reason that the Democrats never solve the problems in places like Detroit and North Philadelphia is because they're aware it would hurt them in elections?
Well, I know that if they solved the problems, there would be less interest in the next proposed federal program to help those who are helpless. If the problems were truly solved, there would be less of an interest and an appetite for the social programs that are the bread and butter of the Democrat Party keeping its constituency. We can take a look at, Detroit, Michigan. You go back to 1950, it was the mecca of blue-collar jobs. That was the highest wage city in the world. It drew people like a magnet. It was growing fast. You could come there with a high school education and get a job in one of the plants and buy a home and get your kids through college, and out of Michigan do something they call go up north, have a summer place or a winter place up in the northern part of the state. But that's all gone now. The Democrats have governed that state since that city since the 1960s, and now it's broken bankrupt. And the people in Detroit, Michigan, actually have trouble getting drinking water into their homes. That's not the path for America to follow. I think it all started with that promise: if you like your health insurance, you can keep your health insurance, period. I think people know that they have been misled, not only in small ways but big ways. And truly, here in the state of Delaware, which many people consider to be a blue state, the response that I am getting from everyday voters across the state is absolutely remarkable. They've had enough. They're ready to take a new road, and they're ready to have someone be their senator, Dana, who believes in them.
What would your number one priority be in the Senate if elected, legislation-wise?
And there's only one thing that's number one at this point, and that's stopping the entry of Ebola into the United States.
Okay. What do you like the most about Chris Coons?
Oh, I like the fact that he loves his country, he loves his family. I respect that.
Okay. I see you've created your own company. From your experience, what effect would you expect if the unemployment rate if the number of regulations were cut in half in America?
Well, we probably don't have to cut them in half. There's probably just 5 or 10% that are so onerous that business owners and business developers, people who are trying to grow their business, struggle with all the time. And we don't have the opportunity in this short interview to go through them in detail, but probably 5% of the regulations, if we could bring some common sense to them and rationalize them or normalize them, would remove many of the obstacles to growing a business. We also have a federal tax rate that's 35%, that if you are a well-connected corporation, you can go to your friends in Washington and through your lobbyists find loopholes and exemptions so that your effective rate is very low. But if you're a business that simply tries to meet the needs of its customers and you're not well connected in Washington, you bear the full brunt of that 35% marginal tax rate, and there is very little left for you to grow that business. We've got to get some common sense into our tax code. In fact, it needs an entire overhaul.
Okay. Wages have been falling in recent years, which is totally out of the ordinary for America. Why do you think inflation-adjusted wages are falling?
Because we don't have a demand for our workers. Our wages will begin to go up when there are 3 companies looking to hire 2 employees. And there will be competition between those companies to improve the starting wage, to improve the benefits, to improve the number of days vacation you get. But until we have more demand for jobs than we have workers available, we're going to see this erosion. It's just that simple. We have done a great job in taking on selling our debt to China while we've shipped our jobs over there. But it's not working. It simply isn't working. We've traded a closet full of well-made, inexpensive Chinese sneakers for what used to be lifetime jobs with great pensions. I don't need the sneakers. I want to have a good job and a good pension.
What do you think Delaware voters should focus on the most in your particular election?
The number one issue here is Ebola. We have people in leadership that simply do not recognize the threat that this poses not only to our healthcare system, but to our civilization at large. Ebola is so deadly, it kills so quickly. There are nurses across this country who are scared to death because they know they're not prepared to treat Ebola, and doctors are quiet because they know the capacity in their own hospitals and in their own practices to respond and react, not only to treat the cases of Ebola, but to contain it so it doesn't spread out of the treatment setting. They know it doesn't exist. And the fact that the President Obama, his administration, with the active support and voice of Senator Coons, has kept these flights and the arrivals of people from the affected areas ongoing and continuing is reprehensible. It's throwing the dice on the lives of potentially millions of Americans.
Okay. Kevin, thank you so much for giving us this interview.
Dana, thank you so much for having me. And if you ever come to historic old Newcastle, please visit the courthouse. It's a place where America started.
Sounds interesting. Thank you again.
Thank you.